coming to us live from Madrid, Spain. Reed Sinnett rhymes with in it to win it. Here we go. Reed, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here in Madrid, and also excited to be on the show with you two.
Here we go, man. We're pumped to have you. Hey, what's the air conditioning situation at your apartment? You got air conditioning down there? I know it gets hot.
Yes, we've got great air conditioning, and that was actually something I was concerned about, when they were talking about housing and things like that. So the way that they're taking care of us from our little apartment complex and stuff like that is fantastic. I don't know if you can see, I got my golf clubs ready.
There you
That's
go.
how I'm spending my afternoon today. There's not much to complain about for me here in Madrid.
There we go. If you got air conditioning, you're in good shape, and then you got your golf clubs as well. If anybody has any questions for Reed, feel free to put them in the chat. Reed, there's so much that we want to talk to you about, but I got to start off with kind of just a crazy question. You played with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay when you came out of college. Okay, can you just talk a little bit about that experience, being in the same room around the GOAT? Anything that you learned from this guy? How was that?
I mean, it was a huge part of my development, and just being able to be in that same room and listen to the way that he tried to absorb and learn a new offense and a new system, the way that he communicated with coaches and his teammates. And I will say one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen is how everybody in that building believed that they could win a Super Bowl just because he was in the building. And he handled that with a lot of grace, and he was as great as everybody imagines he would be. And that kind of made I was a Peyton Manning guy growing up, so being around him was, I wanted to hate him a little bit, but he was as good as everybody pictures. One of the things that I learned from him most was, during lunchtime I was going in to watch tape and watch practice and try to learn, and he came in the first day of lunch, and I think he was a little disappointed to see that I was in there, but we watched some tape together. He had me run the clicker, and he's like, "What are you doing, dude? Figure it out." And so he taught me how to run the clicker, how to watch tape. And, you take some of those little things for granted. And I learned so much from him and Blaine Gabbert and Ryan Griffin. And it was a huge part of my development for sure.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's just really, really cool to be able to have that experience and exposure as a part of your development process as a quarterback. And we'll get into you coming to Europe. You were just telling us off camera, this is technically your first time in Europe, obviously your first time in the ELF. But I'm really interested about your football career, because when I look back, you only started 1 year in high school, and then you only started 1 year in college. But when you got these opportunities, it seemed like you really, really took advantage of them. Can you talk a little bit about that experience of kind of having to, I guess, wait your turn, wait for your opportunity, and then maximizing those opportunities?
It's somehow become the story of my career. And my favorite thing in the world is getting to play. And it's really frustrating when you get some scout team reps and you don't get a chance to go play on Saturdays and or Friday nights even. And um, for me, it gave me opportunities to get better behind the scenes, though. And I took those reps that I got very seriously. And I think that's why I had success in the NFL, whatever you call that success, right? For me, it was even being able to stick around for, multiple years. And I think that approach of, I'm going to take advantage of all the reps I get. I'm going to, maximize the opportunity that I get by utilizing all the resources that I have. And for me, my dream is always just to be the guy, to be able to play. And I did the UFL and the XFL as well. Kind of got told by coaches that that was going to be the situation, and it was not. It wasn't very professional, in my opinion. And so now, getting a chance to be here and get all these reps at practice and get to connect with these guys, it's very fun and very exciting.
There we go. So that brings us now, yeah, to you getting in Europe. And we've got a couple questions in the chat about that. But Matt, I'll let you go if you have a question first.
For sure. So you probably have the most experience for any quarterback to play in the ELF. You were in the NFL for a couple of years, you bounced around the XFL and the UFL, and now you've been kind of ordained as Andrew Windinger's next quarterback. He's had a couple MVPs in the last few seasons. This is your first year in Europe. You've got a ton of pressure. How are you dealing with that pressure so far in the first few weeks of training camp?
There's no pressure. I'm here to play football and help elevate the play of my teammates and be a resource for coach to make sure that I'm doing all the things that he wants to and executing his vision for the offense. And for me, I've the it sounds ridiculous, but the idea of pressure is something that I think you put on yourself. And I'm confident in my abilities as a player. I'm confident in my abilities to understand the system and articulate, what I want to do with my teammates and things like that. And so it's about me going out and executing and helping raise everybody's level of play. And, these guys on this team feel like this is the best team that Spain has ever had. And so for those guys to have that level of excitement makes me feel truly honored to be the guy that is going to be the quarterback for this team and hopefully lead these guys to something that a Spanish team's never done before.
Look, this guy's a pro. He feels no pressure. Ice cold, okay? Ice cold. We've got a question from the chat from Jamal Clay, Athletes Forum podcast. Does a lot of good stuff in ELF football. Which European/homegrown teammate has impressed you the most during training camp? Anybody jump out to you?
Yeah, I mentioned this to you guys earlier. My guy Jordito from Barcelona. He is a young slot receiver. He hasn't had a ton of experience playing football, but he's like a sponge. He just wants to learn, and he's competitive. As a quarterback, he's a quarterback's dream. He gets to the right spot. He understands the system. He understands where to be, and he's competitive, and he wants to be great. And I think that that's one of the best things that I've seen from a lot of the Spanish guys is that they're sponges to information. They don't really make the same mistake twice, but they're hungry for knowledge and for information. And it's so different than how I've been around teams in the States where the XFL and the UFL, again, in my experience, was a lot of guys making excuses of why they're not in the league. And I'm going to get to the league and I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever. And here it's like, how can I get better? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I think that that's just such a cool way for these guys to approach the game.
Yeah, I mean that there's kind of a purity to the sport in Europe, and I don't know if you've noticed that yet, but I really noticed it when I came over here of guys like really playing because they love the sport, they want to get better at that, and you're not running into these type of excuses. We got another very very important question from the chat, Reed. So take the time to think about it. Have you gone to a European McDonald's yet? This is from Will Lytle, a prominent defensive lineman in the league. Have you had the experience of European McDonald's?
I have taken pride in trying to embrace the Spanish culture as much as I can. And I think food is such a big part of that. And the amount of times that I'd heard from guys, you have to have McDonald's. It's so different. You have to have McDonald's. And I'm driving, I'm going to the grocery store. And for whatever reason, the grocery store I picked was not open. I didn't understand why, but there was a McDonald's right next to it. So I was like, I'm going to grab something and see what's going on. Guys, it's still McDonald's. It's still fast food.
Don't eat Dutch McDonald's. That's terrible.
I just hurt everyone's feelings. Like, it's still fast food to me. Like, I don't eat McDonald's in the States really, but I didn't think the fries were as good. The burger was different. I'll give him that. But it was still fast food. So that's my McDonald's take. I don't know if that's gonna, make some enemies across Europe, but that's how I feel about it.
Reed, you just given a lot of Europeans some bulletin board material. I'm personally a little bit hurt right here. We'll talk. We'll figure this out. We'll clear this up.
Okay.
Matt, you got
Maybe
another.
It was a bad McDonald's. I got to pick a different one.
Maybe it was a bad McDonald's. Maybe you need to try German McDonald's. They're really good.
See? They are really good. They got the McRib last time I was in Cologne. I had that since I was like a kid in the UK, so it was eye-opening for me. I'm not gonna lie.
There we go. Go ahead, Matt.
The offense too, because we talked about this a little bit. You got 5 E's on offense, and all of them are the first time being an E in the ELF. Is that inexperience worry you a little bit, or is this just full power, 40 points a game, shootout kind of style, fun offense that we kind of expect with Andrew Whitinger, our offensive coordinator?
Well, Matt, I know you know football well. And the point of the game is to score more points than the other team. So if that means we're going to win 7-6, then that's what we're going to do. If it means we got to win 70-68, then that's also what we got to do. So, I think that there's a little bit of having to, put some of those plays together and make sure that we can score points and outscore opponents. But I mean, it's been impressive to see how versatile some of our guys are, being able to play multiple positions. They have different skill sets, and there's some guys that are really talented football players. And the more that we can refine, some of the minute details and things like that, I think we're going to be in a good spot. And again, I mentioned this to you guys too. I don't have anything to compare it to necessarily, but I've been impressed with the level of knowledge and the level of talent and versatility I've seen from a good handful of the guys.
So, Reed, this is interesting. This is also a question from the chat, and then I'm going to add on to it. It's from Marcus. He says, "Is there a language barrier when trying to play slash lead in Madrid?" And I'm curious about the leading thing because I watched an interview that you did maybe a year ago on YouTube when you were talking about being a backup in the NFL to different quarterbacks, you know, with Tua and then with Jalen, Gardner Minshew, and you talked about how there was kind of different approaches to how you supported those starters and kind of what your role was. And I'm wondering, how do you navigate that role when it's a little bit different team by team? Because when you're on the field, like starting, you're of course going to just your goal is to perform at the highest level football wise. But when you're in the backup position, it's a little bit different of how you add that value. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. In the NFL, it's totally different, right? If you're the backup, you're not getting any reps, and nobody in that organization wants you to play because Jalen Hurts is the guy, Tua is the guy, and if they're not playing, it's because they're injured or something's wrong. So they don't want you to be on the field, but you can do a lot of things to help them maintain their confidence and provide perspective. And there's so much that goes on in the chess match of the NFL that, providing a little bit of a 2-minute insight or something that on game day you can give them a quick reminder to help them not, have to process everything is where you can add value. As a starter, and especially in this type of environment, I think that that's where my leadership style has always been at its best. And so being the guy that people look to for questions or for insights or, you know, I'm very much a positive reinforcement kind of guy. So as we have players that make mistakes or, I throw a certain type of ball, I'm like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Like, can you do this or can you do that? And if it's not something they're comfortable with, I have no problem with adjusting my game. But, there's some things that have shown up already where Andrew kind of goes, hey, this is Europe football, right? Stay a little bit longer on that read, or just because they're in this doesn't mean you have to check it down so fast, or things like that that I've been taught in the NFL. So I'm excited to see how some of that stuff pops up and what kind of plays we can make, um, you know, playing a little bit of a different style of the game.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's always a little bit of an adjustment when you come to Europe. Matt, you got a question?
Yeah, you mentioned Ryan Griffin when you said about Tampa, and First Time Magazine just mentioned it on the thing as well. Ryan Griffin has played in Europe. He was in Italy last season with Venezia Scorpions, and you also just mentioned your play style, which kind of ties into this question really, really well. Tape on you is quite limited, and throughout this whole off-season process, you've been kind of rising up through quarterback rankings as people discover more tape and find out more about you. What is your evaluation on yourself? Like, how would you break down your tape to someone that isn't aware of you?
Yeah. Um, I'm going to give you a little bit of an arrogant answer, I think.
Go.
Good.
But I think if you watch the only game I started in the NFL, I think that is a good summation of who I am as a player. And I think that when I got an opportunity to play in a game on a call sheet that was designed for me, that's how I performed. And when you look at some of my other preseason tape, when I was in Philadelphia, it was like, hey, we're not going to do the things that you've been doing really well in practice because we don't want to show this type of stuff. That's a philosophy by offensive teams or coaches at the NFL level. It's not necessarily, it doesn't bode well for quarterback development, but it is good from the smoke and mirror standpoint of what they're trying to do to win football games in the regular season. So if you watch the one game that I started with the Miami Dolphins, I think that that's a lot of how I play. I move the ball in different ways, drawing guys off sides, making plays when things break down. I'm not necessarily going to beat anybody with a zone read, but if the play gets extended, I'm confident in my ability to be outside the pocket and make plays. Now, I do have a good Ryan Griffin story. So Ryan was a really good mentor to me in Tampa Bay. And I'll never forget, we're sitting watching tape and he kind of told me a little bit about his journey and how he got there. And he's like, the third quarterback is a unique thing in the NFL. And he said, you have to find ways to add value because you're not going to be on the field. He said, if Tom asks you to go get chicken nuggets for his kid's birthday party, go get chicken nuggets for his kid's birthday party, right? You just kind of have to be there to support the group. And sometimes that might mean doing things that don't feel like they're part of your job description. And Ryan was really good to me on that standpoint. And he called me about his experience in Varese, and he set me up with their general manager at Varese. And I was asking him about this experience, and he's like, "You should do this. You should do this." And that season didn't really quite fit what I wanted. I wanted to get paid a little bit more than they offered me, so it didn't work out. And he called me like 2 weeks later, and he's like, "What are you doing, dude?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Are you going to go play or not?" And I was like, "Well, I want to." And he's like, "I'm going to give you Andrew Whitinger's phone number. If you don't go do this, I'm going to come to your house and punch you in the face." And I was like, "Oh, okay. You really mean that?" And he's like, "Yes, it's the best thing I've ever done. Like, you have to go do this." And so, he was a big reason why I'm here. And we went back and forth, a couple weeks ago about what his favorite places are in Portugal and where he traveled and stuff. So, um, Ryan's awesome, and I'm really grateful that he kind of helped facilitate this experience.
That's good, and I'm glad you didn't get punched in the face by Ryan. You ended up to Europe. Speaking of Andrew Whitinger, he is kind of he's one of the gurus of offense here in the ELF. Really great reputation. How has it been working with him? I know you touched on it a little bit on some of the adjustments that you had to make coming to Europe, but in general, how's it been with Coach Whitinger?
I love his creativity, and I think he and I see the game very similarly. And so it's going to be fun for us to sit down and game plan together and talk about how we want to attack opponents. And we've already had some of the conversations of like, what are we good at? What are we not? What are we going to be? Who is our talent and what kind of team do we want to be? And that is the chess match that I love about this position, about this game. And so I think that watching from last year, Ryan did something that's different than everybody else, in my opinion. And so he being our head coach and the way that he approaches me and my expertise and things like that, I think has been really good. And I had bad experiences with coaches that didn't like my experiences and maybe sharing like, "Hey, well, I've done it this way. Like, what do you think about that?" And they're like, "No, we're doing it this way." And Andrew's kind of like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you think?" He's like, "You tell me." And so that kind of like, detail about routes and being able to go to what I'm comfortable with and what I've experienced versus like, you have to do it my way. There's always a give and take there, but I'm really happy about that part of it, and we'll see how it continues to develop.
Love
Yeah,
that.
just
Matt, go ahead.
yeah. So me and Andrew, we are close as well. He scouted in the NFL, so he's been a bit of a mentor for me. And me and him talked in the offseason about him wanting a quarterback with a little bit of NFL experience because of the importance of the playbook. You've had experiences with NFL, several NFL playbooks. Is Andrew running an NFL level scheme? Or do you think is that something we're going to see in ELF? Just this comprehensive, just all out offensive unit that's just so much more elevated than anything else we've ever seen.
Um, I do think that you are correct in the first part that it is an NFL playbook. There's no doubt about that. And the way that he coaches it, the way that we tag things, like it is NFL level, no doubt. I don't know that that means that you're going to see something that's completely different than anything you've ever seen. I think the thing about an NFL playbook is it allows for versatility. So we can get guys to places that we want to. We can create matchups that you want. And that's, I think, the advantage of having an NFL style playbook rather than being limited by how you have formation set up or, hey, we haven't actually installed that yet. We can't actually get that guy to that spot. We'd have to create something completely new. And that leads to challenges. But when you shift in motion and you have these things like you can start in a formation that you start in every week and use a motion to get to something that's completely unique. Or you start in something completely unique and get to something that feels like your basic, day one install stuff. So that's where I think the advantages of an NFL system come in. And then that's again where creativity wise, he's going to be ahead of everybody. Not, I shouldn't say it like that. Where in the past, it seems like he has had an advantage because of how he's designed things. And that's the part of the game that I love. So I would imagine that every week, maybe we have one or two plays that you kind of go, oh, where the hell did that come from? And I think that's kind of the fun part about this.
Love him, man. This man is a wizard. Whitinger is a wizard. Love watching his stuff and excited to see you run it. All right, last serious question for me, and then I have a kind of a stupid question. We're doing our contenders later in the show, our top 5 contenders. Should the Madrid Bravos be in this conversation as championship contenders for 2025?
I said it earlier, and I just got chills as I started to talk about it. But these Spanish guys are believers in themselves, and I think that that gets you so far. And I don't know if we're going to be the biggest team, if we're going to be the fastest team, if we're going to be in a position that we're one of the most talented teams. I have no idea about that, but I'm confident in our ability to game plan and put our team in positions to have success. I'm confident in my ability to execute and be consistent. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to make mistakes, but I think that these Spanish guys believe, and that's the thing that stuck out to me the most the first couple of days that I was here, is the way that they talk about each other, the way that they love each other, the way that this is a brotherhood that I don't think I could compare to anything in the US. Like, it really is something that's unique. And I think those are things that make a great cohesive team, whether or not you have ups and downs. That's a group that if they catch fire at the right time, you probably don't want to play a team that's got great cohesiveness.
Love that. Matt, if you got any more football questions before I ask my stupid question?
I'm pumped. I can't lie. I'm excited. My last thing, right? The offensive line. I really like the Spanish offensive line. Some people think that's a bit of a weak point. Just what's your feeling so far? I know you can't say too much, of course, but I really do think they're underrated, and I think people going in with less of an expectation on that unit. What do you think of the offensive line? Just the first couple of weeks into process.
That is a group that I've been very, very impressed with. KBR left tackle is strong and athletic. Yasir is one of the freakiest athletes I've ever seen on a football field. He's like 245 pounds. He's jacked and he's playing guard and he's moving people. I'm like, what? This is unbelievable. And then Carlos Carrasco is fiery and passionate as anybody I've been around. I mean, the way they communicate. Brennan, our guard, tackle, he's versatile. He's played multiple positions. He's strong. He's passionate. Like, they communicate well. I mean, that's half the battle at the offensive line position is, can we all get on the same page? And they're on the same page. And that doesn't mean that we're not making mistakes or losing at times or things like that. But if we can get moving in the right direction and block the hats that we're supposed to, I know where our answers are. I know where the ball is supposed to go. And I think that that's part of what makes a good group cohesive. And, we kind of talked about the things that, I feel comfortable with. And I don't think that this is a league where there's a ton of pressure. I don't think that there's a lot of exotic looks, but I feel confident in my ability to replace pressure and handle that stuff in the protection game. And if that's not going to be an issue that we see a lot, then I think it bodes well for our group specifically.
There we go. All right. Last question. Nothing to do with football. We were talking earlier before we started recording about movies. I'm a big movie guy. I'm a film guy. Give me your top 3 to 5 all-time movies. If you can. It's a very difficult question, I know.
Yeah. So I'm not going to give you a simple answer, but
Good.
I started loving like the IMDb top 100 in college.
Yeah.
So I just started watching these movies, and then COVID hit. And so I'm training for the NFL. I'm playing in the NFL, but I'm not supposed to go anywhere. So I watched so many movies over COVID. And I started rating them 1 out of 100. Okay. So I've got like 4 or 5, 100 out of 100 movies, depending on when you ask me. Okay.
Let's go.
So my number one favorite is Blade Runner 2049, directed by Denis Villeneuve. I think he's unbelievable. One of my favorite movies.
Incredible.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 2, I love Inglourious Bastards. I think that Tarantino, I think that's his best movie. The premise, all of it, World War II stuff, Brad Pitt, fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that Parasite, Bong Joon-ho,
Oh,
won Best Picture a few years ago.
Yeah.
That sent me down a Korean movie rabbit hole, and Parasite is a perfect movie in my opinion. I've got a really weird one that I don't necessarily recommend very often, but Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a French movie. It's a love story about a woman who's about to be married off, and there's a portrait artist who's coming to paint her to send her off. And it's a beautiful movie, not a ton of dialogue, but the way it's shot and stuff, I think is unbelievable. And then I can't leave out Martin Scorsese's The Departed.
Oh my gosh. Madrid Bravos are winning the championship.
You just made a big fan of Nick Alfieri. I'm going to tell you that right now.
All right, good. Reed, you've won me over, man. Earlier about the McDonald's, forget it. We're cool now. We're cool. So we're gonna do another podcast. It's gonna be 3 hours long. It's gonna be us talking about movies. That's a fantastic list right there. This man knows what he's talking about.
Are we done? You're kicking me off already? I thought we were going to do this for 3 hours.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's talk film. We usually do 15-minute interviews, Reed, and this one went 30 minutes. And we did get a comment that this interview was absolutely effing awesome. And it has nothing to do with our very articulate and interesting guest, Matt. I think it was just because of you and me, probably, right?
I think it is. It's mostly Matt. And the fact that we didn't get to World War II history, I think says a lot about our personal restraint.
Yeah.
But, we can debate that in our 3-hour movie / World War II podcast.
Things got heated in the pre-show. I'll just, I'll leave it at that. We got each other's necks a little bit, but I think we made it through the interview without getting too personal, which is good.
We're gonna be all right. All right, we're gonna have Reed back on multiple times, Lucas. That's our producer. But make sure we schedule that. Reed, brother, thank you so much for talking to us on ELF Live. Absolutely fantastic interview, brother. Good luck this year.
Thank you very much, Reed.
Thank you for having me. Anytime you want to chat, I'm available.
There we go.
Hell yeah. Pleasure, brother.